On today's episode of The Glue Guys, DEFCON 7. Boop, boop, boop. We are diving into all the Kyrie, Kevin Durant. This is me diving, YouTube audience diving.
Out there.
We're diving. DEFCON 7. Welcome back to The Glue Guys. This is Mike here. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on the netsdaily.com. Check us out on Twitter at BK Glue Guys. The Athletic. Get yourself on the paywall at theathletic.com/Glue Guys. A subsidiary of the New York Times. Right?
Michael, we got some news, buddy. Or do we? We don't actually.
Nets are in hell.
What is the news anymore?
So obviously this is our draft review show. The Nets, I give them an A+ because they crushed the draft this year. Absolutely no flaws. No, let's talk Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So since we last spoke, Brian and I, what was it, Monday? It's when we had our first pod reacting to Shams Charania news about the impasse. Since the impasse, there have been some developments.
Yeah.
Primarily of which is I work with Shams, but a very oddly worded tweet where it was essentially Kevin Durant is mulling his future / Kyrie's now looking for a new home, but maybe not. This is a real who do you believe situation. Woj, Windhorst.
Yeah. I mean, Shams represents Kyrie's interest in this, and Woj, the Nets plus just the Nets, I guess. Is that fair to say? Is that people have been trying to distill it to terms as that? So people want simplicity, Mike. And are we going to give them what they want? Or are we going to give them our classic brand of gray shades or gray primer?
Again, sponsored by The Gray Man, Netflix's looming blockbuster from the Russo brothers of Marvel's Endgame fame, starring Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans.
Need I say more?
And Chris Evans.
Okay.
Please check out Netflix. And if you want to go get a subscription to Netflix, go to thenetflix.com/Glue Guys. Get yourself behind that paywall. That's not a real URL. How funny would it be if it was, though? Brian, so I think there's a conventional wisdom, which is just not necessarily wrong, that Woj is the corporate speak and Shams is the in the bunker players viewpoint. I'm going to tell you, both Shams and Woj have access to all angles.
To both sides.
Yeah.
I think that's the thinking man's approach to this.
There's good people on both sides, right? And so even though that Woj may seem to be more from Sean Marks, and I'm sure he is, it's also like Shams has access to Sean Marks, on some level. So anyway, so it seems like it's like a real who do you trust. Basically, this is what Woj just says. Kevin Durant has not told the Nets he will ask for a trade if Kyrie Irving exits Brooklyn, though Woj himself puts out this long list of teams that Kyrie may want to go to if he goes to that point. Shams has done the same thing. Well, this has really been put in a blender.
Hear the clip from the etceteras, the ETCs this morning.
So let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of quotes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with that. That's best.
So Kevin Durant's podcast, etceteras, with Banksy / Eddie Gonzalez as the host.
Big shout out.
They recorded, I believe it was yesterday. It seemed like, at least from the social media postings, the recording happened yesterday and the podcast went out yesterday. Quick turnaround at the boardroom's, podcast office.
Not faster than us though, Mike. That was a whole 24 hours.
This is what KD had to say. It's no involvement in all. I can't be involved when he was asked whether he's involved with the Kyrie situation. This is a man's livelihood. This is much bigger than me. Being a free agent, it's one of the most important times in your career. That can't be swayed by anybody else. I just do me and wait for the time. And there's another quote. That's where I'm at with it. Basketball is obviously the most important thing. This is about the friendship of him and Kyrie. I try not to let it get in the way of somebody else's personal decision. Like I said, whatever happens, the friendship will still be there, which is actually kind of an interesting quote if we're foretelling anything. When you heard the etceteras quotes, anything pop out to you?
Well, one of the things that I think about in this whole, Shams v. Woj information battle, this Cold War, because they've really taken some opposing sides in this as the information has come out. I think it's interesting if these rumors that Shams are reporting about KD wanting a trade are linked back to Kyrie's team, who is his stepmother, I guess, plus whomever else is on his team. Who, by the way, no shade there, because I did look at her LinkedIn, and she's a real person. She sells ads for BET, so it's a professional person. It's not a just total layman or whatever.
But still a pretty wild choice.
A pretty wild choice, and definitely a difficult position, right out of the gate for sort of an untested agent in what is becoming an increasingly tense negotiation here. So that's an interesting data point. But I think if the rumors are linked back to Kyrie's team, that's a weird thing for a friendship. That's an interesting strain on a friendship to have to be using your friendship as leverage in your contract negotiation. if you were trying to get a job somewhere and I was like, involved in that decision making in any really truly any capacity, that would be weird, Mike. That would be weird for me and you.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that I think our friendship would be a detriment to any contract negotiations, because I would just be like I wouldn't want to upset the apple cart between you and I on that level.
That's what we want to protect most. It's not the job.
I would take less money to continue to hang
That's
out
not
with
true. That's not true.
No, but it's a very odd dynamic. I will say this. There's a reason why Draymond Green's podcast is getting more notice than Kevin Durant's at the moment.
Oh, why is that?
Draymond's very honest, maybe too honest. Kevin Durant, come on, man.
By the way, people have been talking about players with being on the iTunes charts and stuff like that. I just want to stress here, as an industry insider, those charts are about trending data. Okay, they're not about overall downloads. So
yeah, because we'd be above them if
would be. I don't want to come in over the top, boys, but we've been in the game. Just kidding. You probably are crushing us, but
they are.
Yeah, by a few magnitudes. But the point is, people are like, we're charting. Don't read into this. Is a classic, podcast industry 101. The charts are about traffic, attention. It's a complicated algorithm, not really about downloads. Just want to put that.
It's like people bragging they have a hit Netflix show when really it's just that you're just you're the algorithm after the floor is lava.
Yeah.
So after people are done watching that, it hops to you and you happen to get a nice ratings bump because of it.
Something like that.
Okay, I'm not here to call out Kevin Durant. There's no reason. He can say whatever he wants to say. He doesn't have to say anything, right? It would be better if I was advising him, cone of silence, right? You shouldn't even talk about it. And he has a podcast, and they felt compelled to do a podcast even within this this time frame. But if you're going to do it, talk about it a little bit more than just saying there's no involvement at all. Because that's not true. That's not true that there's no involvement. If Kevin Durant's not involved at all, and then he goes around, let's say the Nets play hardball with Kyrie, and then Kyrie's like, okay, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go to sign with the Lakers for the taxpayer mid-level exception. And then KD's like, hey, guys, I didn't like that. Sean Marks would be like, hey, Kev, you had no involvement. You decided not to involve yourself in the situation.
It's a hedge, of course. But I don't think, if we had to, put it on the spectrum of hedging, it falls more in the favor of I'm not tethered to Kyrie necessarily, slightly. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so the second quote about friendship, about basketball is the most important thing, but I try not to let that get in the way of somebody else's personal decision. Like I said, whatever happens, the friendship will still be there. When I saw that quote, that was very much of what we talked about on our show earlier this week, which is we're led to believe that this Kevin Kyrie friendship is so close that of course they're going to play together. All this is just posturing. It's just negotiation. There's no way these two guys, these best buds, would ever leave each other.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about two people may be friends and realize they shouldn't live together. And Kevin Durant is literally saying, friendship, we can still be friends, but maybe we don't need to play basketball together.
Well, and here's the other thing too. There's no guarantee that when Kyrie, if this does implode, and I'm not saying it will, but let's say it does, that they go and they're going to go play on the same team again somewhere else. That's it doesn't even practically make sense on that level, because they would now be again far flung to two different teams. That's whatever that that's one point. But also, like, I think about this from the perspective of the optics around KD in this case, because so KD's career has, when he's been flamed, it's been flamed for the optics of being dragged to one team or another by, in one case, opportunity, now by friendship. I think if he takes a personal, if he takes Kyrie's decision personally to the effect that, he wants to leave, it's still yet again another optical L in a word, or in a sense, for just him not having autonomy, right? And that's sort of where maybe if I were in his position, and I'm certainly not, but part of, maybe this is a bad point because I don't know how much he actually cares about these optics, but the idea that he would let a friendship guide his thinking to the extent that it totally changes his career trajectory yet again feels like something that he would at least be thoughtful about at this point in his career.
And I'll say this. So legacy matters to a lot of these guys. And obviously getting swept in the first round is damaging to Kevin Durant's legacy, regardless of it's not massively, but it is. And, as much as people may hate that LeBron, goes from one team to the other, wins some championships, then leaves that franchise in wreckage for the most part, and then goes somewhere else, right? And completely disrupts any flow. At least he wins in those places. And this is KD's first real LeBron moment. Him going to Golden State wasn't LeBron going to Miami necessarily, because Miami they won one championship earlier, but it's not the same level, right? That's a different move. LeBron has gone places and built contenders and champions. KD, ultimately, if we're talking about the upper tier legacy, that's sort of that the Mount Rushmore of the NBA, the 50 greatest players, the top 15 greatest players, where I think Kevin Durant is firmly within the top 15. This Nets situation, not to get too big picture, is going to be the thing that is damaging to Kevin Durant's greatness resume. Yeah. And it's almost like something he can't really control. He tried to make the best decision for himself. He wasn't having fun in Golden State, which of course he went to the Nets, so I defend his decision. But he decided, okay, wait, Kyrie, because at that time Kyrie wasn't as damaged as he is now. I'll go there with DeAndre Jordan and Kyrie. We'll build something really great, and we're going to win a bunch of championships. This situation has been a disaster. Yeah. It's just been an utter disaster, and it's kind of, I know he's been hurt, but it's partly on him and for making those choices.
Can I also add one other thing that I keep seeing out in the wild out there, and it's wild out there, Mike.
Tell us.
This heaping dose of copium that people are injecting, mainlining right now, which is this 18-point differential in the Boston sweep thing. We've talked about this before, but that was a capital S sweep, guys. Let's stop. Yes, we had some injured players. Our two best players played the entire series for 40 minutes apiece or whatever it was. And it was yes, we got things close towards the end of games to shore up that point differential. But I don't know if you feel this way, but at no point, but for that first game, did I feel like we were within arm's reach of winning any of those games at any point. They had an answer for everything. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And if you
in
were
the moment, we have to remember what happens in the moment.
As we do an autopsy of that season, it doesn't benefit anybody to be in denial about what happened there. We have to internalize what happened. That was a bad series and a capital S sweep. We got, Mike.
That was there. It was demoralizing at times, even as close as it was. The part of this, I love statistics, I love analytics, and I love sort of looking at the numbers and having that cold-hearted Terminator take. Mm-hmm. But watching that series, there was a gap between the two teams. Now, I think it's a gap that could be closed if Kyrie comes back and Ben Simmons is healthy and Kevin Durant, and there's cohesion, but we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about what we saw.
Yeah,
and we're
talking about
ugly.
Okay, let me even put more context into this, because we're talking about the reality of what happened was that there was a wedge driven between the best players on the team,
potentially even a ramp.
A ramp. There was even before that,
ramp and a wedge.
What got us to the ramp was the
wedge.
Wedge
Is just a little ramp.
That's true. That's so true, Mike. You just turn it on its side. And the whole reason why this is a fraught negotiation is because of the lack of trust that there won't be yet another wedge that leads to yet another ramp. And that is why it's like this is why there's this, this schism of this chasm between the parties, and that chasm is a trust. And yes, we've gone into like, is Kyrie to blame? The fact of the matter is that was a bad season, both on court and off the court. It affected our personnel, downstream effects. This goes into what we've been talking about with, like, everyone says publicly Kyrie is a great guy. What this is in life, in business, in everything. Like, don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. Watch what they do. What happens with Kyrie is that people want distance from him. That's just been the case.
It's like my high school girlfriend said she wasn't cheating on me, and then I watched what she did.
Yet another layer.
And she was in the hot tub on homecoming night.
What? In the hot tub? Oh my God.
I can tell you that story later.
Please.
That was crazy.
Please do.
Fun night. Anyways,
different onion.
I just want to differentiate here. I was not in the hot tub. Just so.
Well, that's where the cheating sounds like. That's where the cheating comes in.
Everyone aware. So, anyways, okay. Let's peel back that layer.
Yeah.
Let's do quick break. Coming back. Because we need to talk about sort of the general implications of what may be happening here over the next 5 days. So that's when Kyrie Irving has to make his decision. Coming back, we'll talk about the next 5 days. It's DEFCON 7 here on the Glue Guys podcast. And we're back. DEFCON 7 has been activated. Brian?
Yeah.
Here's what's going to happen.
Okay.
Within 5 days, June 29th is the date that Kyrie Irving has to decide whether to opt into his final year of his player option. I think from all sort of scenarios of all the routes that could be taken, whether it's Kyrie coming back to the team and being traded, all the likely routes lead through him opting in. Whether it's to come back to the team on just a 1-year deal, whether it's to come back on an extension, or to opt in and be traded.
Yeah.
I still think, like, as unstable as Kyrie can seem at times, it would be a very drastic move to forego $25 million to take a taxpayer mid-level exception with a certain team. That's unprecedented
We're
stuff.
not there yet. We're not there yet.
Kyrie is an unprecedented dude. And also, like, people have said this, so this isn't like an original take. But if Kyrie's sort of displeasure is with money and commitment, why would that same person then want to go to another team for like a year and $5 million?
Yeah, there's a really like complicated dynamic at play here now that the kimono has been opened on, the Nets' sudden
talk about homecoming night,
sudden desire to play a little bit of hardball, because there's an interesting problem that now
great movie Keanu Reeves
creates is that in the so Kyrie is an asset with a lot of baggage, and we are now creating yet another sort of data point in his perceived, and I'm saying this because this is now coming from the Nets, perceived drama. Because from Kyrie's perspective, he's like, hey, I'm not being dramatic. I just want what's owed to me. I am a max player, and I'm looking for a max contract. Done and done. Makes sense. They're like, well, that last season was a calamity, and we have, our own dog in the race. But by making this a fraught negotiation again, they're now driving his value down yet further for this trade. And when I looked at the responses to Woj's tweet about the preferred destinations, I think I went down a real dark Twitter rabbit hole yesterday. I think you could probably tell. But I went down and probably looked at like a couple, I would say like at least 100 or more responses. And I think I found one person who, with a lot of qualifiers, was like, I'd take him on the Mavs. And that was, again, this is Twitter. This is the big, put a giant asterisk on any of what I'm saying here, but just out in the sort of the public thought forums of the world, for better or worse, his value is very low at the moment.
Well, yeah, amongst fans on other teams, like there's no fan base that is clamoring for Kyrie, so their fake trades, the sign-in trade or the opt-in and trade for Kyrie is like the Knicks fans like Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, Nets got to throw in a second-round pick with Kyrie, and it's like, what are we talking about here? Ultimately, as silly as this may be, if Kyrie actually gets traded, that team is going to need the Nets. The only team that may not, that Kyrie could seriously go to, is your New York Knicks. And I just want to say one thing. It's been said before, but I want to say it clearly. Did you watch the draft last night?
I cut the first half hour.
One of the more so you saw 2 picks.
Yeah.
So so one of the more confusing things that happened during the draft last night, when everyone knows this, is the Knicks Pistons Hornets trades that all happened. OKC was involved in there too.
Right.
That essentially the Knicks dumped Kemba Walker for a first and 4 second-round picks to I don't even know what team he's on right now. And they got 3 first-round picks from OKC to trade number 11 this year. A lot happened, but essentially the Knicks cleared some cap space, got closer to max salary cap space. They still have some ways to go, and they got first-round picks that they can use in dumping. Very, very easily. They got 3 of them. It's going to be pretty easy to find a place for Alec. They need to dump Alec Burks and Evan Fournier to just be able to then get Kyrie as a max and not have to give the Nets a single thing. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility. The Knicks are, if they attach 2 of those first-round picks to Evan Fournier to the Orlando Magic, send him back to Orlando, and Orlando gets more first-round picks, and then they get Evan Fournier back. Alec Burks is actually a guy I think teams may want, and, the Knicks could just flip Alec Burks to whoever who may want him. For a guy who is a non-guaranteed. So it's
I'm
very
just
easy.
Of Kyrie Irving with Knicks fans and that whole it may open a actual portable hell. That would be such.
No. That would make it feel good. I know a lot of people listening to this are like, don't let Kyrie go. Give Kyrie. No. That would make me feel good because he would be such a disaster for the Knicks. It's
just such a bad combination. That one specific one. Yeah.
I know people may know this, but they may not. I did a literal Knicks documentary for The Athletic, a 20-year look of the James Dolan ownership, starting from the end of the Patrick Ewing era till today. And many Knicks fans know this. The number of point guards that have come, Marbury, Francis, Derrick Rose now, Kemba Walker, all over the hill, all of them crusty, injury-riddled, not what they exactly were before they got there. Kyrie going to the Knicks as his final stop in the NBA would be so perfect because we know it would be an absolute disaster. There's no way that story turns into a fairy tale. There's no way that he going into the Garden and being attached to the Knicks and all the pressure, he bristles at Alex Schiffer, Brian Lewis, Christian Win, sweet humans.
Just gentle,
Greg Logan,
gentle young men. Yeah.
Polite, completely, they do their job, but they aren't, the cauldron that is the Knicks coverage where
those are
guys
become
become
the elite. That's where the elite really hang their hat. Yeah.
So it's like going from if you're a local state senator in some, flyover state to then going to Washington, D.C., and going to Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
You got MSNBC, CNN,
whiplash.
Fox News in your face every day.
Yeah.
So I as much as, again, I know the path to a championship is Kyrie to return. We all do have a kumbaya moment at Joe Tsai's yacht.
Let's put actually a fine point on this because I think that it's getting lost in translation a little bit. I think people are confused about the fact that, yes, we put a lot of detail onto the different permutations of what could happen here, but ultimately everyone kind of agrees that Kyrie coming back, and whether it's on a player option and then an extension through that or whatever, is ultimately the best, for us. That's keeps us competitive, keeps KD, 25% happier, whatever the case is, and we get to run it back out with Ben Simmons et al. and see what we have. Nobody's in denial about that fact, and also to all of the points we've raised previous. Losing him at this point puts us in a weird economic situation with our assets. And you've talked extensively about how we actually have to get a package back that we can then flip yet again for that third star. Getting ahead of the fact that probably Ben Simmons and KD won't be enough to win it all, Mike. But so I don't want to get anyone confused about where we stand on this. Obviously, we agree that Kyrie is a special player, and there is still that data point also of the Bucks series, right, where things looked pretty good. So it's not to say that everything is in complete shambles, right? So just wanted to put that. Well, I mean, everything is complete shambles with the core identity of just Kyrie and KD plus a third star. That concept has at least some traction. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yes. The Nets are right now that like really great idea startup that has a horrible like business management. Their books are all out of shape, but there's a private equity company that's just licking their chops at the Nets and saying, if we could like bust this thing open and really pump up this asset, we could sell it for even bigger price.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
There's a idiom about honey or something and salt, sugar via. Anyways, it's about like, just giving people.
There's a what?
It's an idiom.
An idiom. Yeah, but like, what's the idiom?
I can't come up with it, but it's something about like
sugar and honey and salt.
It's either honey,
sugar, and space makes everything nice.
Anyways, it's about the fact that like, have we made a mistake here just by stepping on this landmine of playing hardball with Kyrie, where now the relationship is just perma fucked, and he's just going to be
the toothpaste out of the tube type thing,
right?
Is that what we're going for?
My thinking about this is like,
the queso out of the cup.
Here's the thing: if you just cave to Kyrie,
the guac out of the bowl,
are you ultimately going to get more of what you want just by him like having a completely unopposed tract to do whatever he exactly wants in his life, or are we just creating a situation in which it's almost certainly doomed to curdle?
Yeah, so I can't really figure out.
Because here's the other thing too, like Joe Tsai is an executive at one of the largest, most powerful companies in the world, or was, or whatever he is. You don't get to those positions in life without having some teeth, Mike. He's got some sharp elbows, I'm sure. And
not to get too political, but particularly in China.
Yeah, specifically,
it's tough to operate a very big business in China.
Yeah, some tough markets out there. So he's like, I'm sure he's comfortable with making things weird and awkward in a negotiation. I'm positive. But is it, is now like their ego being thrust into the forefront to our overall detriment?
Well, here's for me and Bagley. He tweeted out this last night. One note on the Kyrie Irving Nets situation. Brooklyn's stance against giving Kyrie a max extension has been thus far fully supported by owner Joe Tsai. Now, Nets Twitter went ablaze not because of this tweet, but because Joe Tsai liked a tweet yesterday from some random Nets fan who did not tweet at Joe Tsai, which is why people are going crazy about it. He liked the tweet that the person basically was like, good for Sean Marks for taking a stand. Full team over one person. And Joe Tsai liked that tweet. Again, I'm pretty sure Joe Tsai was not at that tweet. So that means he's on Twitter searching around for Sean Marks and looking around for things, unless if he's being fed that through Twitter. And I would doubt that Twitter pulled up that tweet specifically.
Joe doesn't have that big of a following, so that algorithm could be pretty weird.
Yeah, we're actually kind of bigger than Joe Tsai on the internet. I don't want to, he's got $1 billion, but we got like 6,000 followers. So eat it, Joey. So this is what I don't get. So trust me, like, I've talked to you about this. My emotional well-being has been better since the idea that Kyrie Irving may not be on this team.
Okay.
I just got to be honest. Like, I'm so sick of the experience. It's been so disappointing. Dude, I'm worn down. I'm burnt out.
I will say, like, not to say that Nets Twitter was like some kumbaya, harmonious situation, but
it was.
Things have gotten wild. I mean, and I've talked about it extensively, but people just show up in your replies and be like, "You're an idiot, and I want you to die." Like, whoa, where did
I've been watching Lion King a lot
come from?
with my son. Thinking of the Boss Baby thing. Yeah. But I've been watching Lion King a lot with my son, and it's like, why did Simba ever really leave Timon and Pumbaa? They're just chilling in paradise eating bugs, and he has to go back to the wasteland that Scar and the hyenas have picked over.
Mike, that's the Dharma. He has to follow his Dharma, his life's purpose.
Yeah, but why does it have to be his life? He should just, he's in paradise with his best friends. Why go back and follow your father's path? Follow your own, Simba.
This feels like it's about to be a Jordan Peterson moment here. I'm about to.
No, I don't know why this has anything to do with the Nets, but the Kyrie experience has just been horrible, and he is one of the most sort of anti-fan oriented basketball players of any generation. He thinks he has fans, and I know he does, but he doesn't care about like Nets fans. He cares about Kyrie fans. And, you know, ultimately all we as Nets fans would want is just him to play basketball. Like, that's all we ask of our basketball players, is for them to be basketball players. But he does not care about connecting with a Nets fan base. With any of his actions has nothing to do with like, how will I be viewed by the people that cheer for me, by the actual Nets fans that cheer for me. What he does think is like the people online who are like, go get him, Kyrie. He understands those fans and he will react to them, but he doesn't care about the Nets fan base. So I agree with you. This team, like, if they want to win championships, he needs to be back. What does that mean? Should they sign a max extension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using your Lion King analogy, I would actually even say that, like, what's currently happened is the Simone and Puma oasis of hedonic pleasure, of transitory, like, what happened last season was KD and Kyrie, and Kyrie to a greater extent, indulged in their transitory desires, like, and the effect was a first round sweep. Now the Dharma is pushing for them to aspire to be more, and this is the contract negotiation here. We're sorry, that was a little bit loose. I'm trying to connect the dots, but you see where I'm headed, right?
I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah.
I'm loving every second.
They were in a pleasure oasis, Mike. It was the Sirens Island, okay, in a Greek tale,
I do just want to pose this, okay? Let's say the Nets give Kyrie the max extension, right? What's actually the worst thing that could happen? Ultimately, if he ends up being like, he plays for 1 year and then he retires or whatever, and then the contract's on the books. I mean, their franchise by losing Kyrie right now, they may potentially go down the SHITTR anyways. They may, like, losing Kyrie basically kills you because Kevin Durant may then leave after that. So to me, that's what, like, you have to look at the cause and effect of all your actions, and then what's the outcome from all those cause and effects moments.
It's a probability game for sure. But the thing that's what makes it so much more complicated is that Kyrie Irving's worst case scenario is a little bit worse than most people's worst case scenarios. Like, take the Darren Williams experience and then add, a 20% more worst case scenario to that. Like, we even, like, in the Discord, shout out to the Discord, and you can join that in the link in the YouTube below or in our Twitter profile, or discord.gg/glueguys. It was like, thrown out there that it's possible out of protest that Kyrie signs his player option and then just sits and doesn't play. Like, there's a non-zero chance that even something as diabolical as that could go down. Like, I'm not saying that there's a high probability of that. There's not. But it's just the idea that that's even conceivable to the fan base does demonstrate a little bit about, how unpredictable he is and where everyone's heads are at.
Do you actually think... Let's look at Kevin Durant again for a second. Has anything changed your mind about where Kevin Durant sits in all this? Because just to go back to our Monday conversation, we were like, if anything happens with Kyrie, it's because of Kevin Durant. Whether it's he gets the max, Kevin Durant's going to tell Sean Marks, hey, man, you have to give him that or I'm going to leave. Or if Kyrie doesn't get it, it's because Kevin Durant's okay with it. Are we as firm in knowing that Kevin Durant's fully on board with whatever decision happens?
Yeah, I think the latest Woj sort of communication that communicated what was now the Kevin Durant hedge that we heard on his podcast, where he's like, there hasn't been a discussion between KD and the front office about wanting a trade. Now that leaves, a lot of things unsaid, obviously, but that, key point here, but that he wants to be, up to speed with whatever the plan is in a post Kyrie world, which is to say that, like, do what you guys got to do if this thing goes sour, but, make sure you're not getting nothing back that you can't, to your point, flip for a pretty immediate valuable asset that continues to make us, championship contenders. That's a tall order, but that's basically like where we've sort of landed on this entire time, which is that, like, KD probably doesn't love the situation, but, doesn't want to be... His wagon is not permanently hitched to Kyrie to the extent that he can't see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel if you do get assets back that result in a third player. Now, how realistic that is, Mike, I leave to you. You're the specialist there. We've talked about his diminishing trade value over the course of the last 2 episodes. That's a tall order, as I said. But I just think that that's a pretty realistic response from KD, and it seems to be consistent from him and the Nets management messaging through Woj.
Can I ask you another question?
Please.
And I already think I know my answer. The Nets' hardline stance with Kyrie, do you think it's because they know that Ben Simmons is going to be good to go, and they're not as worried?
Nobody's even taught. Nobody cares about Ben Simmons at this moment.
Thank you. That's what, okay. I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because there could be a take of the Nets are so confident that Ben Simmons, he's going to be in the right mindset and he's going to be back healthy and he's going to be kicking ass. I will say during the NBA draft last night, I was watching the Perkins, Kendrick Perkins, Malika Andrews, Jay Billis broadcast, not the ABC one. And they were showing Ben Simmons highlights in relation to some of the players. And I was like, oh my God, what a freak.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't remember what he looks like on the court.
I should say, not that nobody cares about Ben Simmons, period. Just nobody cares about him with regards to this particular negotiation. I like Ben Simmons. I'm excited to watch him play. I don't want to get that chopped out of context. Too late.
Question for you.
Too late, please.
Would you be, serious question. Kyrie leaves, in either scenario. Would you be more excited for a team of Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, and whatever crap they get from whatever team Kyrie goes to, or Ben Simmons, all the young players, a bunch of draft picks in your chest, and whatever other small piece you get from a Kevin Durant trade too? What excites you more as a Nets fan? Seriously. Are you more excited still that Kevin Durant would be on a team but without Kyrie, or would you rather them just be like, fuck it, we just got to blow this shit up? Because Kevin Durant, particularly Kevin Durant, would be like, why am I here?
Yeah,
I
would like to keep Kevin Durant at pretty much all costs. I'll say that. If it's really if what Shams is saying is closer to the truth, then I keep Kevin Durant at all costs. However, I am kind of excited to see what Kevin Durant looks like as just the 1A leader of a team because he's diversified that leadership position over the years. Not to say that Kyrie's been especially desirous of any leadership, but he's split that obviously with Harden and Kyrie. And I just think that Kevin, when the basketball was the most fun to watch over the course of the season was the period in which it was the young guys and KD to a certain extent. That was a really fun period in time. Not to say that that's the most winning path forward, and not obviously we hope to get some assets back in the course of all this. I don't know. I just, again, Kyrie plus KD and a third star is obviously a good situation. On the whole, net good, that's what you want if you can make it work. But I'm open, at least in theory, to a KD as the 1A pillar of the team and some other assets, hopefully star assets around him. I'm open to it.
Yeah. So, and I do think, we've said this so many times, KD being here for another 4 seasons, at least contractually, that's also gives me some cover with Kyrie, why I feel listen, again, I've talked, I'm so sick of the Kyrie experience. It's so ridiculous the way he's operated. He has no interest in being committed to the team concept, doing whatever it takes to win, just doesn't care. His job is to be a basketball player. He seems very disinterested in his job most of the time, though he's electric on the floor when he is sort of activated in that way. But Kevin Durant, I would be really worried. Let's say Kevin Durant only had 2, this upcoming season, the next season on his contract. I would be very terrified to give Kyrie 4 years. But because Kevin Durant would be there through the length of a Kyrie offer, it gives me cover. Because let's say it really blows up and Kyrie retires, well, I would have Kevin Durant to trade. You kind of have the fallback option to use Kevin Durant, not use him, but, if Kyrie blows up and Kevin Durant wants to leave, okay, you rebuild your team around whatever assets you get from the Kevin Durant trade, and hopefully Ben Simmons will be something then, right? So, okay, I guess I don't know. I don't know how to even justify this. All I'm going to say is, what's a worse scenario? Kyrie leaving or Kyrie getting a max contract extension? Kyrie leaving's a worse situation. I don't think...
Undeniably.
I don't think it's even close.
Yeah.
So, as grumpy as I can be, Joe Tsai, Sean Marks, just give him the money.
There it is.
What
Wow.
are we doing?
And now
Just
you see that Mike at the 0 hour at the 1 yard line of the negotiations is going to die like a dog. He's going to roll over and give you everything you want.
You should see me negotiating with my sons to be like, no dessert, no dessert. And the second they start crying, I'm like,
yeah,
hey guys, you can have whatever you want.
Yeah.
Gummies, ice cream, what do you want? Like I fold like a cheap lawn chair.
There you go.
Just folding in half.
I will say there is, and not to get, too self-interested or whatever, there is a part of me, though, that longs for the day before all these new-faced, fair-weather fans stayed out of our replies.
And they don't understand jokes.
Yeah, they don't get jokes. They're humorless Kyrie stands, and I'm over them.
What do you think of the Nets' 3, free agent, undrafted free agents that they picked up? Do you have any thoughts about Donovan Williams or?
Do you have any? No, I have no thoughts. You guys,
I have no clue. I mean, they seem like humans.
I was supposed to
play basketball.
go do some research on that this morning, but I got distracted, Mike. So that's next pod. We're going to go deep on the Nets draft day acquisitions.
They very much seem like they're humans that play basketball.
True.
And I appreciate humans that play basketball.
Big true.
All right. Well, can we get what's the final prediction? I mean, we'll talk next week.
You want to get a final prediction? You want to do that to ourselves?
I want you to do it. I don't know. I'm not.
I honestly think that. God, wow, this is so tough. Really, Minecraft gun to my head. I think he just. I don't see a world in which he just signs his player option. I just don't see him.
What do you mean?
I don't see a world in which he just completely, because basically, as far as I understand it, the expectation or the two sides of the negotiating table is that Nets want him to pick up a player option and play nice for a year to prove himself as a good teammate, reliable person, whatever. And he's like, that's BS. There was a crazy COVID thing that happened that was way out of the norm. Give me some slack. I play really well when I play. But there was a weird season there, so just give me the extension. So that seems to be the two sides of the argument. Ultimately, I think Kyrie has the better hand in this round of poker. So I give him probably a better chance of just getting the extension. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's still it's a small margin.
Yeah, I think. God. Here's the thing. So there's the Ian Begley tweet again about Josiah has been fully supportive of not giving Kyrie the max extension. Josiah was also fully supportive of banishing Kyrie for a year because of COVID and then brought him back. And I'm just not Josiah is spineless. It's not that take. I'm just saying he's also a flexible leader. I'll be nice about it. And maybe he takes a hard stance in negotiations, like a lot of negotiators, and then when you get down to it, it's well, we tried. Nice try. Let's just give you your money. I think there's a chance where it's a 3-year extension with a mutual option for the 4th.
I don't think Kyrie is in the giving an inch business. I think as far as negotiations go, I'd be very surprised. Just my read, pure intuition, no real actual insight into this. Just seems like a guy who's pretty willing to make things incredibly difficult and awkward up until just all the way through, And it's hard to negotiate when a guy has a block of C4 in his hand and he's he's ready to, that's my assessment of where Kyrie is. I think he's way more willing to blow it up than the Nets are, in effect.
What I really hope doesn't happen is that if let's say this all blows up and then they have to trade Durant, that it's not just the Nets getting Tyler Hero. Do you know what I mean? I really, 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 if they're going to trade Kevin Durant, this needs to be just the most outstanding. I mean, Bobby Marks said it would be the biggest trade package. I mean, we said it too. It doesn't take a former assistant GM to understand that. It's it would have to be just massive. And
yeah,
and I really don't want this to be this manufactured
even disgruntled.
BS.
Let's even look at the past disgruntled star packages. They've been pretty good over the years. Even after Ben Simmons and James Harden in a couple of different instances, I guess at this point, asked for trades, they got good stuff back. So like the idea that this is kind of contradicting what I was saying earlier about his trade value. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, like people hold out and generally get some decent value back for even disgruntled stars.
I mean, let me just quickly say this. If they trade, so obviously they don't control their draft picks like ever. And next year it's one where Houston doesn't get necessarily a Nets pick. It's a right to swap. Houston's going to suck next year too. So, if the Nets had to be in a tanking situation, it's not like they have to. They wouldn't have to tank. They could just get a lottery pick. They can get in the lottery, and the Houston will probably still be in the top 3. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But knowing the Nets' luck, they would get the number 1 overall pick and have the chance to draft, that big Frenchman Wenabayam, or however you say his name, and the pick would get flipped to Houston.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say however you say his name because I'm being dismissive of his name. I'm just saying I've never really read his name ever.
That was a very aw shucks finale, Mike, but it is what it is. That's another one, a perfect episode for the can. At BK Glue Guys on Twitter, discord.gg/Glue Guys. Hop in there. That's where all the spiciest takes are. YouTube, we're cranking them out. Hop in there. NetsDaily.com, leading source for Nets news. The Athletic. Get behind the paywall. Get that paywall access to all of the Shams news, reporting, all that stuff. And Mike, that does it for us. Thanks for being on my show.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you guys soon. Bye, bye, bye.